Hello, and welcome to Boot Camp Unit 3A, Whole Numbers and Integers. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different classifications of numbers here, and we're going to be kind of trying to categorize them as best we can. The first one that we typically talk about are negative numbers. Negative numbers are things when you go less than 0. If I'm trying to do 3 apples and take away 5 apples, you would think that you can't do that. Now, the actual explanation depends on what you're trying to do. You can say negative 2 apples, but that doesn't make sense in a physical context. So it really depends on your application, but typically there always is an explanation for going beyond 0. If you're talking about banking, a positive bank account means that you have money. A negative bank account, which we're all trying to avoid, means that we owe money. Temperature is another classic one, as you can kind of see here. The thermometer goes below 0 because it can get colder than freezing. A temperature of -5 is 5 below, or 5 degrees below freezing. This kind of brings us to the bunch of the other classifications that we have. We have the natural numbers, we have the whole numbers, we have the integers, we have the rational numbers, and we have the irrational numbers. The natural numbers are what you use to count with. So if you say start counting right now, you would start counting and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, as far as you need to go. And then you learn about this thing called 0. 0 is what dictates the whole numbers. You start at 0 and you keep counting. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. 0 then is the only whole number that is not a natural number. As we'll see at the end, if you know what category you're in all the categories after that that kind of are all part of your same group. We'll see in a minute that irrational numbers are off in their own little world, and they're the ones that are unique in that sense. The integers are just numbers that don't have a decimal or anything or any strings attached. These are your positive numbers, 0, and your negative numbers. So -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Rational numbers are numbers that typically, if you think of the word ration, it's a certain part of a whole. Anything that you can write as a fraction is a rational number. So you'll see that we have 7 written here, and that it is rational. Well, what the heck? Well, 7 divided by 1 is 7. We can write it as a fraction, so it is rational. Typically, the categories that you'll see are numbers that end their decimal, so say 0.314, that ends. Or numbers that follow a very, very specific pattern. Typically, if you can guess the next number, then it's rational. So for example, 0.36363636363636 over and over and over again is rational because it follows that pattern. Those are the rational numbers. Off in their own little world, we have the irrational numbers, and you have to genuinely try to get an irrational number. You can't get an irrational number by accident. The most famous irrational number is pi, 3.141592655. There's no pattern there. It is irrational. Another classic one, which we'll see a lot later on, is the square root of 2. That is 1.412, and so on. That has no pattern. You have to genuinely try to get an irrational number. So when we're trying to figure out what groups numbers belong to, let's take the number -3. We're going to start at the center there at natural, the first one we talked about, and work our way out. -3 is not natural. It's not a counting number. -3 is not a whole number. It's not 0 or a positive number, but it is an integer because there's no decimal. There's no strings attached. It's just -3. Because it's an integer, as we work our way out, it is also a rational number. It's -3 over 1. And irrational numbers are the ones that are all by themselves. That was Unit 3A, Whole Numbers and Integers.